And Marriage, please let me know how you can see it, if you can see the full screen.
Yeah. So when I say switch, you go to the next slide, right?
Yes, Marriage, I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So as was announced, we are continuing the overview of the Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapters. Yesterday, we began the first chapter, which sets the stage for the entire teachings of Bhagavad Gita, where the battlefield is there, and Krishna's on the battlefield with Arjuna. The chariots are there, the soldiers are there, the horses are there, the armies are there, and Arjuna is seeing the whole situation, and he is overwhelmed with lamentation. Of course, prior to that, we heard how the Kurus were somewhat overwhelmed in a very anxious way, that when they heard the blowing of the conch shells of the Pandavas, they didn't expect such power coming from the Pandava army. But the blowing of the conch shell indicated that they were going to be victorious. That was a very significant part of the first chapter. Now we'll go. This is the foundation by which Bhagavad Gita is there. Gita Samapsha, and Krishna is speaking. Arjuna is asking. First, before he's asking, he's speaking, and his speak is somewhat erratical. He can't come up to the point of accepting his position as a Kshatriya who has to fight on religious principles, and it's being spearheaded and organized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. In fact, the whole process of the Bhagavad Gita is that actually this war was the last resort. Krishna did everything to avert a war, but the Kurus were so greedy that they wouldn't even give the Pandavas even 5 villages to manage. And they offended Krishna. They tried to kill the Pandavas by putting them in a house of shellac and various other types of attempts in order to push them out of their rightful heir to ruling the throne. Dhritarashtra, he felt that his sons should be ruling. Actually, he was a blind king. He was meant to rule, but because he was blind, he wasn't able to take the position. And the Pandavas, the Pandu, died untimely. So actually, the Pandavas were the heir to the throne, and not Dhritarashtra's son. But he felt that since he should have been the king, that his sons. So he surreptitiously took that position of forcing out the Pandavas, and he tried to kill them in so many ways just to eliminate, so his sons could rule the kingdom. So now, after the battlefield is somewhat set, the 2 armies are ready to go. Arjuna falls into a state of lamentation, and he can't fight. His voice is choked up, his hairs are standing on end, his Gadiva bow is slipping from his hand, his arrows are falling out of his quiver. He is in a very state of pitiableness, seeing what it means to do his duty, which means to fight against those who he felt were very dear to him, such as his grandfather Bhishma, his martial arts teacher Dronacharya, friends and relatives on the other side. This was a fratricidal war. This was between two cousins of the same family, so they're intimately related. So now we can go to the next slide.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, I think it's taking time to load. I pressed the button. Sorry. Apologies, it's taking longer time than expected. So I might have to come out of the presentation mode and oh,
Okay,
yes.
okay. So this is just a summary of the first chapter. It's mentioned here. That summary will be again presented at the end of this chapter also. And Arjuna's reasons not to fight based on his observation. And and then the next slide, please.
Sorry, it's
Srimati, can you help?
the presentation is kind of trying to come out of it. Apologies, everyone. I
Guru
think
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances and goes to Prabhupada. Guru Maharaj, I think the slides content is little big, that's why it's taking time. I'll also
yeah.
check my side. 1 second.
Let me just stop sharing and then I will share back again. Just give me a second. I think it has to come out of the.
Well, if we can't use the slides, I'll just speak without the slides.
It's done, Guru Maharaj. Just give me a second. I will not share it in the presentation mode because yes, it can.
Okay, so he gives 5 reasons, or 4, actually 5. He feels compassionate towards, he doesn't want to kill. He doesn't see any benefit in it. There will be no enjoyment. He sees only sin as a result of them. He sees family traditions and the destructions and Vana Samkara, which are 2 points mentioned within the family decision traditions, and now he falls into indecision. He can't do his duty. And this is where we begin the second chapter. After the second chapter begins with Sanjaya speaking, and Sanjaya is narrating this to Dhritarashtra. He has transcendental vision. He can see the battlefield from a distance, and he's talking to Dhritarashtra what's happening. And he explains that ultimately Arjuna is full of compassion, his mind's distressed, he can't speak. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, also, you can go on to the next slide, starts to say, my dear Arjuna, how are these impurities come upon you? What is the reason? How these are not befitting a person who actually knows the goal of life. They do not lead to higher planets, nor to infamy. So you see, here's the compassion, enjoyment, saintliness, and fearful of sinful reactions, destruction of family tradition. He is in decision. Now, this is interesting to understand from our own perspective. We may many times face situations in life in our devotional service where we become a little bit overwhelmed. We cannot do our duty for whatever reason. We find it difficult. We find material reasons to be more important in our spiritual activities, or apparently appear that way. We sometimes we inquire from our friends and relatives and others to help us, and still we don't get to the answers that we're looking for. This is very significant because we all find that at one point in our Krishna consciousness, things become impossible to execute. It appears to be impossible. And then, see, Arjuna right now, he is going through this state of, because he's not seeing what needs to be done in order to solve the situation. He's using his own limited understanding. We also may find that in our Krishna consciousness, we start to see bhakti as being material, ordinary activities. And we don't see the reason why we should do our duty or how we should do our duty. And therefore, we simply fall into a state of indecision, and sometimes we give up. Next. Okay, so these are the different, the answers given by Krishna are aligned with this particular slide here. And we'll go into that as we go into the chapter even farther. So next slide. Okay. So Krishna uses knowledge to dispel his false sense of compassion. He uses karma kanda principles to explain how enjoyment is not actually the goal. Buddha yoga, intelligence, and karma yoga for the destruction. These are the answers to Arjuna's lamentation. And these are the verses that align with that. We'll get into that as the chapter goes on. Here, and Arjuna's, he doesn't know. What's better? Should we be conquered by them or should we conquer them? Actually, we don't even care to live, even if because they are our superiors. They are they lead the quality of life. They teach us. Now they're standing before us, and we are in a position of fighting against them. How can we? He becomes overwhelmed. Now the next verse is where he somewhat comes to enlighten. And he says, now, Karpana dosham pakta swabhavam kushamitum dharma samuda chetam chacheta sadnischitam buddhi tame sishyate hamsari mam tvam prapanam. Now I've lost, I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of weakness. In this condition, I am asking you, Krishna, to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered to you. Please instruct me. So now he comes to his senses. Before, it's a discussion between him and Krishna on an equal level. He realizes he can't get anywhere from that position. And so he takes the role now of a disciple. And now, then Krishna now opens up. Because you'll see sometimes the disciple wants to present all of his own ideas to the spiritual master and thinking that he can discuss it in a very practical and open way. The spiritual master will listen, but ultimately the spiritual master gives the final understanding. Unless the disciple accepts that, there's no question of disciple. As disciple really means discipline. And discipline comes from it follows by obedience. Obedience follows discipline. So without obedience, there's no question of disciple and spiritual master relationship. Before, Arjuna was simply trying in his own way to understand the situation. And this is what disciples do, people in the material world. They try to figure out everything for themselves. When they realize they cannot understand things, then they understand, I have to go to the spiritual master. Please instruct me. So now he comes to his senses. And then here Krishna's different. Okay, so here Krishna begins the instruction in verse number, we skipped it over, but it's in verse number 11. Krishna says, after Arjuna speaks this verse, Krishna says, but he continues to go on. He says, actually, even after he surrenders to Krishna, he says, I don't know any way to dry up this grief. And he said, and then he falls silent and he says, Govinda, I shall not fight. Krishna smiles. When Krishna sees this, he smiles. And he speaks the following words. So here's where the spiritual master comes in. He says, Asocham anvasocham stam patyavaram tyavasasam yakusam zagudasam shan nanu sotam vipanditaha. While speaking learned words, you're speaking so nicely. And Prabhupada also mentions this in a statement. He says, Arjuna was soft-hearted. He didn't want to be the instrument to kill those who were his well-wishers, at least apparent well-wishers, during the early part of his life. Dhritarashtra took care of the Pandavas as his own children. He helped them grow up. And Duryodhana, not Duryodhana, but Dronacharya taught everything Arjuna knew in his fighting capacity. And Bhishma was revered as the grandfather of the entire dynasty. He was respected and loved by everyone. Now, Krishna is setting the stage for what he's about to say. And now the spiritual master speaks. And he says in verse number 13, Dehino smin yata dehe kovaram yovaram jara tata dehantara pratir diristutana muyanti. The embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. The soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. So he's saying the soul, you, in the previous verse, he says, never was the time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future, so any of us cease to be. He was saying that we are not this body. We are that element in the body which gives life to the body, which passes through different stages of life. And one who understands this becomes free from bewilderment. We might go through different stages in our life, but these different stages are just the transformation of the body as it is affected by the time element. The soul never changes and it stays. And when the soul has to leave the body due to the deterioration of the body, the self-realized soul, the one who is actually in knowledge, you can say, I know who's actually in knowledge, knows I don't die. I simply go on to another situation. I'm eternal. Next slide. Here in verse number 20, and then Krishna gives a whole set of reasons, starting with verse number 20, from verse number 14 all the way through. Here we've chosen number 23. Nayanam chindanti sastrani, nayanam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayad apo, na soyanti marutaham. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor can it be burned by any fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Next slide. Here, the soul is eternal, unbreakable, insoluble, neither burned nor dried, everlasting, present, unchangeable, immovable. Next verse. Here's a listing of all of the characteristics that Krishna mentions. He says the soul is eternal, has no change, it's not destructible, doesn't perish, it's not measurable, it doesn't slay anyone, nor is it slain. There's no birth or death for the soul. There's never a time it comes into being. There's never a time it leaves. It's unborn. It's ever existing. It is the primeval force of life. It's immutable. That means it's unchangeable. Cannot be cut to pieces, burnt by fire, moistened by water. So Krishna goes through 30. And these are all different verses as he mentions the different characteristics between the soul and the body. Or we may even extend that between what is eternal and what is temporary, what is material what is spiritual. So the living entity is a spiritual being, and its characteristics are these: unchangeable, immovable, invincible, invisible, inconceivable, insoluble, amazing. In verse number 30, it says, some say he's amazing, some wonder how amazing he is. The soul is very amazing because the soul can inhabit a little tiny insect, a germ, which you can't even see. And it can be in the body of a gigantic elephant. And it can move that little tiny insect, and it can move that gigantic elephant. Therefore, the soul is amazing. Very powerful because it's part and parcel of Krishna. So now, after Krishna describes in so many ways the difference between the body and the soul and the qualities of the soul, then he starts to speak in a different way, that if you don't fight, your enemies will describe you in many unkind words. Avachad vadam cha bahun vadasyanti tavahitaham vindatas tavasam martyam tato dukha taram nukim. Your enemies, they describe you in so many unkind words, and they'll scorn your ability. What can be more painful than this for you? It says dishonor is even worse than death. Because you are a Kshatriya, you will be dishonored for not fighting. What could be more painful? Well, Krishna is now turning his attention to Arjuna's position as a Kshatriya, who is now refusing to do his prescribed duty. Next verse. Here, and oops, go back to those pictures. Yeah. And so you see the picture on the right. He said, if you win, that's mentioned in verse number, let's see here. He said, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, Krishna says, opening up the doors to the heavenly kingdom. So that top picture is that even if you get killed, you'll attain the heavenly kingdoms. And it goes on to say in the next one, however, and if you're victorious, you'll be king of the world. This is what this photo is indicating here. And as a fighter, as a Kshatriya, as a man of honor, your reputation will be lost. People will speak bad about you. Those who have highly esteemed your name will think that you have left the battlefield out of cowardice only. Your enemies will describe you in so many and then he says, go on to the next verse. O son of Kuti, either you'll be killed on the battlefield and turn the heavenly king, and we just mentioned that by these pictures. Therefore, get up and fight. There's no loss. Here, these pictures indicate this little mouse on the top, and then the lamp to the right there. There was a little mouse who was running around on an altar, and there was a ghee wick that was lit. And the arti was finished, but the ghee wick was still lit. The mouse ran into the ghee wick, and his tail caught on fire, and he started waving his tail, and he got the benefit of performing arti to the deity, and he got liberation. So even a little mouse, he's acting in a devotional way, unknowingly. It's called a Gyata Sukriti, but because it's in devotion to Krishna, he gets the benefit of offering arti to the Lord before he dies. And then Hanuman on the right there, Hanuman on the right is that he has to set fire to Lanka, and it's understood that if someone sets fire, that is a criminal but he did it as a service to the Lord, therefore it's glorious. Here on the left, we see Vibhishan being taken into the assembly of Ram and Lakshmi and the monkey soldiers. He gave up his brother, he gave up his family, he gave up everything in order to fight on the side of righteousness. So doing one's duty sometimes becomes difficult. But we see the examples of Hanuman, Vibhishan, like that. Next one. This is the answer. You can pass this one up. Go on to the next slide. And here in verse number 41, Vyasvaga Budhir Akeha Kuranandana Buhusakya Yanatascha Buddhayo Vyasainam. It says, now, Krishna speaking, those who are on this path are resolute and purpose. Their aim is one, O beloved child of the Kurus. The intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. So here we see the example of a master teaching his student how to become fixed in fighting by focusing completely on the target. That bird in the back is the object by which the child is fighting, and he doesn't see anything but the eye of the bird. There's a nice story related to that our what was it? I think it was Dronacharya was teaching the three Pandavas, Bhima, Arjuna, and Yudhisthira how to fight. But it was only Arjuna who had what we say, it's called Ekeha, complete focus. The aim is one, Eka one aim only is to hit the target, that's all. And he sees only the target. So a devotee in devotional service is fixed on the instructions of the spiritual master. He doesn't consider anything else to be a consideration. He simply focuses on the instructions in the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada talks about this verse as the success of Krishna consciousness. He refers to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which he quotes this verse saying that what this verse means, that whether it's easy or difficult, it doesn't matter. These things do not enter into the mix or into the decision of a devotee who is engaged in devotional service. What matters is the instructions of the spiritual master, and they stay fixed on that. Therefore, their intelligence is resolute, not irresolute. Those who have many, many desires, they cannot stay fixed in the process of devotional service. Therefore, their intelligence is many-branched. Next verse, yeah. So we're going a little bit farther ahead here. And there's many verses. And then Krishna speaks many verses in between until we come to this verse number 54. But Krishna is also talking about those who are on, he says, men of small knowledge get attracted by the flowery words of the Vedas. The Vedas deal with the three modes of material nature, rise above these modes. They're full of duality. Simply stay fixed on the self. But Krishna is speaking to Arjuna in such a way as to help him become fixed on his duty of fighting. And he says, as a man of duty, you have your right for your duty, but the results are not up to you. Don't consider not performing your duty, because that is the most important thing. So in Krishna consciousness, our service to the spiritual master is the foundation by which everything develops and evolves into the success of one's activity. If we study this Gita very carefully, you'll see how being one-pointed in Krishna consciousness is the success of Krishna consciousness. And then here, this verse 254. Arjuna Uvacha, after hearing from Krishna in so many ways why he should fight, how he should stay fixed, how he should not deviate, then how he should not listen to other philosophical teachings coming from the Vedas. The words of the spiritual master are actually Veda Bhattarata. They are the fixed principle by which the disciple makes advancement. Arjuna now says, Stita pragyasya cha bhasya samadhi stasayad kesavam. Stita di kim prabha seta kim masita vajeta kim. O Krishna, now he wants to know more. What are the symptoms of those whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk? So now he wants to know what are the qualities of one who is fixed in devotional service. And he mentions a few. Yeah. So these are the verses that sort of align themselves with these this particular question. Go on to the next slide. Here, Sri Bhagavan Upracha, this is a very key verse in this whole series. Pajahati yada kama sarva parthamanogatam. Atmareva ryatusta stita pragyata dochate. O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of sense desire which arise from mental concoction, and when the mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Here you see the example of Prahlad Maharaj is surrounded by fire. His father wants to kill him. But because his mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord and not thinking of anything else, taking full shelter, he's in transcendental consciousness. Therefore, he is fixed in devotional service and free from any apparent harm that may come from the outside. Because one who is absorbed in Krishna is not affected by any. And now Krishna, now the answers are here. Krishna gives the answers. Dukesha anuvigyamanam sukkesho vigatas viham vitaraga bhaya kroda spita dimuni uchchite. One who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold measures, who is not elated when there is happiness, who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a stage of steady mind. So here, this is actually transcendence. One who is not disturbed by what happens around them. In other words, there are so many things going around, and even in the mind, but one who is not fixed on Krishna, on devotional service. And happiness comes, it comes. Happiness goes, it goes. Attachment, they're not attached. They're fearless. They're not affected by anger of any situation. And they are called, Stita Dimuni. Stita Dimuni means the sage of steady mind. So in order to execute devotional service, one has to come to that process of keeping the mind steadily fixed on the activities of devotional service as given by the spiritual master. Next one. Yeah, this verse refers to one who can withdraw his senses from sense objects. As a tortoise, he brings his limbs within the shell. One who is able to withdraw his senses is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So we use our senses, but we are not used by the senses. This is what this is meant. In other words, the servants, Prabhupada said, servants can be senses can be servants, or they can be serpents. They can bite and cause us harm, or they can be an asset to achieving the goal of life. So we have to use the senses and not be used by the senses. The sense objects, taste, form, smell, sight, and touch are everywhere in the environment. So the senses become attracted to these different sense objects, and then the mind becomes drawn to that. So you'll see, but one who is actually like a tortoise, when the sense objects are there, they can withdraw their mind from the sense objects, and when they need to use their senses, they can use them. So they're called Swami. Swami means one who controls his senses. Swami. Go means senses, and Swami means controller. Das is one who is controlled by the senses. So Krishna is teaching this here. Ragadvesha vimuktais tu, visayan indriyais charan, atma visayar vihedatman, visaramarigaits tuti. But a person free from attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regular principles can attain the complete mercy of the Lord. So here, this is very important. So actually verses 262 and 263, I don't know, it's mentioned in this series but I'll read from the Bhagavad Gita, because it says, when one contemplates in a material way the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And when attachment develops, lust arises. When lust arises, anger comes. From anger comes delusion of memory. And when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When intelligence is lost, one falls into the material pool. So here's the process of falling down, becoming attracted and attached to sense objects and meditating on them. Because we cannot enjoy, we become frustrated, and therefore we become unhappy, and then the whole process goes until actually one loses their connection with the process of devotional service. So here, so one who follows this one, free from all attachment and aversion. We have to become attached to devotional service to Krishna. No one can give up attachment, but attachment has to be directed towards what is beneficial. And for the soul, Krishna and devotional service is that type of attachment that raises the consciousness to the spiritual platform. Otherwise, the senses and the mind, along with the intelligence, become enemies as they drag one towards the material, and constantly trying to enjoy, hankering and lamenting, I want this, I can't enjoy this, I get this, I'm afraid of losing this. This attachment and aversion is the seesaw by which the material energy works. Next verse. Yeah. Okay, so these are some of the wrong things and the right things. Disturbed by dualities, the body is me. When the body dies, I die. We're always full of anxieties and perplexities. So one has to be tolerant, understand through knowledge that we don't die. The soul is eternal. What happens to the body doesn't happen to me. And that consciousness which pervades the body is me, the soul. This is sort of a recap from the verse. Here's that verse that I said. Dayato Visayam Pumsam Sangas Tesu Prajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kama Kroda Vijay. So here's the process of falling down. Go to the next verse. You can see which ends in the one who falls down and get into the material pool. So these visuals here, here it is. It starts with attachment and to sense objects, then lust, anger, delusion, bewilderment of memory, loss of intelligence, and finally one loss. So Be careful in your execution of devotional service not to get attracted to sense objects. When your mind is fixed in devotional service, sense objects will not go away. They will always be there, but you're not attracted to them. You're not attached to them. Just like in our life, sometimes we see certain sense objects and we become very repulsive to them. Or certain sense objects may be in front of us, but we don't even notice it because we have no attraction for them. There may be a very beautiful girl, a very beautiful man somewhere in the area, but because we're not interested, we don't take any, we don't observe in that direction. So, but one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness, although the sense objects may also be very, very attractive by quality, one is not attracted, nor is one averse. Aversion is another side of attraction, because if you're averse to something, that means you're attracted to something. If you're averse to something material, you're attracted to something material. We have to develop our attraction to Krishna and be averse to everything material. Then the mind is fixed, and then the intelligence becomes our friend, leading us towards the path of perfection. Next one. Okay, so here again, the different reasons why Arjuna didn't want to fight. And the answer is compassion. We're not the body, no enjoyment. Still doesn't matter. If you win the war, you'll go to the heavenly, you'll rule the earth kingdom, and if you lose, you go to heaven. Fear of sinful activities. Devotional activities have no sin connected. Indecision. Indecision comes when Arjuna stopped trying to figure it out himself, and he depended on Krishna for advice. The person, Sthita Muni, when one is in pure transcendental consciousness, then all of their qualities become glorious. And then the last one, Varna Samkara, destruction of the dynasty, like that. So these are the answers to Arjuna's dilemma. Some of us, yeah. So that is the essence. Verse, I'll read verse number 72, because I always liked this verse. It's not mentioned in the series here, but it's interesting. Actually, it's verse number 70, which relates to, this whole chapter relates to not becoming attracted by material sense objects. And here, apuryamanam achalam pravistam samudra pravashanti yadvat tadvad kamayam pravashanti sarve shashamti apnoti nakama kami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flows of desires that enter like rivers into an ocean. So desires are going to come our way, but just like rivers into an ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still. Now, the ocean is not disturbed by the rivers coming in, although the rivers are coming in. One who is like the ocean can achieve peace, and not a man who tries to satisfy these desires. So here's the key to remaining strong in Krishna consciousness, because we are surrounded constantly by objects of sense gratification. And if we stay fixed in our consciousness on Krishna and devotional service, then the desires will continue to come, but there will be no influence by these desires. One will remain deep, as the ocean is deep and the rivers cannot affect the ocean. Okay, so then we have some questions coming up.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you for the class. Before questions, I want to launch a poll, like a quiz, 2 questions. So first we'll do that, and then we'll take the questions, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
Yeah. Dear devotees, you're going to get the question 1. Second.
So we have a question by Rishab here.
Sorry. Yes, Maharaj.
Bhagavad Gita question here.
Yeah, you can see a question on your screen. I think I can.
Absolute truth is realized in three phases of understanding. These three divine aspects can be explained by the example of, you have four choices. Choose one and then hit the submit button.
Does the speaker participate as well?
Yeah. Host and co-host can't participate, but
Speaker can participate.
okay. So how many?
Okay, so is there another question?
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. I have one more question. So this is one more. Yeah.
What does Lord Krishna begin to instruct Arjuna? And then there's four choices. The questions are quite easy.
For you, Guru Maharaj, maybe.
Question one, sorry, I think I ended the previous one, but question 1, 79% gave the answer, and 24% gave the first choice, and third choice 76%. So
Do you want to share the poll on the screen, Mataji? It'll be
yes,
nice for everyone to see.
yeah. So only 25 devotees participated. Okay.
Out of 38.
Yes.
Come on, everyone. Just select one option, at least.
Did all 38 people participate?
No, Guru Maharaj, host and co-host can't do, and yourself also. I think 3 of us we can't do.
So 35 entries.
Yep.
Okay, so it's almost 2 minutes. So then I'll see 1 second. I'll share this. All new things for us. Yeah, the share results. So the correct answer is only after Arjuna surrendered to Krishna as a disciple. So 77% answered it, and 60 devotees got it wrong.
And the other one?
Yes, Maharaj. Here 22 devotees participated, and the correct answer is sun. The absolute truth is realized in 3 phases of understanding. These 3 divine aspects can be explained by the example of the sun. 64% got it right. So the correct answer is sun. Thank you, devotees, for participating.
How many people got it right on that one?
14 people out of 22. 22 devotees participated, and 14 got it right.
Yeah.
3.
The example of the sun is the sun god, and the sunshine. These are 3 aspects.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Srimati Mataji. Thanks, Maharaj. Thank you so much for your session. It was really nicely flowing through all of the Bhagavad Gita session. We will start the question and answer. Devotees, if you can keep your cameras on, that would be nice. Rishabh Prabhu, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, please don't congratulate me during the class. Just stay on the philosophy. Just
okay.
Yeah. Keep the philosophy flowing.
Rishabh, yes.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj. This is Apahalo obeisances. I was really resonating with being firmly
Increase
fixed.
your volume. Increase your volume. Maybe come closer to the mobile, Prabhu, please. Yeah.
You hear me better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
So I was really resonating with the aspect of being fixed in the instruction of the spiritual master and having a firm resolution, not having your intelligence many-branched. And even though I'm in the temple, I kind of doubt that my intelligence is still many-branched, even though I'm trying to all my activities be connected to Krishna consciousness. Being in the temple, there is many aspects that may not functioning well, and you would like to cover them, you would like to try to develop them. But then a spiritual master gives you a specific task you should do. So if you're focusing only on the task the spiritual master gave, not us, should we then focus only on the spiritual master's instruction, or we should also try to kind of spread our energy also in other aspects of the temple or preaching areas? I mean, is there any catch?
Good question. The answer is that the instructions of the spiritual master should be foremost. And if a devotee by nature, if they see something that it needs to be done, or some service, or some devotee needs some help, and or something, they can also get involved with that. But they should not sacrifice their main service, which is the instructions given by the spiritual master, which comes in relationship to the temple through the temple authorities, as a substitute for that. They should do both.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have time, you can do the second part. But if you don't have time, then you should do only what the instructions of the spiritual master. But you have to understand, sometimes the instructions of the spiritual master means to use your intelligence how to serve. That's one of the most important instructions of the spiritual master. He's not there every minute with you in terms of to tell you what to do. You refer to his instructions that he gives in a general sense. And if he gives you instructions specifically, you have two categories to work with. So one of the instructions that the spiritual master says, that we should develop friendly relationships with other devotees. It's not that you sacrifice that in order to do maybe you have to clean the floor, or you have to do some kind of service that's attached to the development of the temple. But there's general instructions which apply in all circumstances. Just like it says, always remember Krishna. That's for everybody.
I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Prabhu. Just in relation to that, Guru Maharaj, I wanted to add that the spiritual master instruction is always similar to what Srila Prabhupada's, mission is about. So it's, what you said is definitely the spiritual master instruction should be the foremost to be.
Yeah, spiritual master acts on the behalf of his spiritual master. Mm-hmm. And in our case, Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya, so he sets the standard. And the individual spiritual master will take the instructions, apply it to the disciple according to the time, place, and circumstance. This service is for you, this other service is for another person. The services may be different, but the instruction is the principle of obedience to the instructions of the spiritual master.
Yes, Shilpesh Prabhu, please go ahead.
Krishna Maharaj. One of the reasons Arjun didn't want to fight was because he felt compassion towards his enemies. But if I've understood correctly, Krishna is saying even compassion, we should still use our intelligence to use discernment in a situation. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's also misplaced compassion. That's called sentiment. And people fall into that very easily. when the compassion is not applied to the situation, which will bring about the results of the activity. I can give you two examples. One is, both of them are spoken by Srila Prabhupada in his lectures, where he says that once there was a young boy, he was 3 years old, and he came down with typhoid fever. So the doctor instructed the mother that because he has typhoid fever, if he eats, he could get sicker and die. So don't give him any food. He should work simply to get rid of the disease and not feed him. So the mother was following that. But then the mother had to go someplace, and she left her daughter, who was about 11 years old, to care for the child, her younger brother. And she told him, don't feed him. She told her daughter, don't feed him, even if he asks for it, because he can get sicker. So she leaves, and the boy starts crying immediately. Give me parathas. I want parathas. He's asking for, yeah. And so the daughter, she starts thinking, oh, my little brother, he's crying, he's hungry. So she makes him parathas. She forgets about what the mother says, and she becomes overwhelmed with the idea that, oh, I want to help my brother, he's hungry. So she fed him parathas. When the mother came back, the mother was livid. She was really angry at her daughter and scolding her daughter. The daughter was crying. The daughter couldn't understand why her mother was so angry at her. But here's misplaced compassion. That's an example. That the daughter was thinking, I want to help my brother, but she didn't know how to help. How to help means to follow what was told, to restrict him. That was better. Yeah, if you give food to a person who has tuberculosis, they could die. Solid food. So the boy probably said, fortunately, the boy didn't die. But because this was a live example that Prabhupada was privy to in his personal life. So that's an example of misplaced compassion. Misplaced compassion is, another one is, a person kills somebody, and then they give him a light punishment, and then they let him free, but they don't, and then he goes out and kills somebody else. So yeah, compassion is not leniency. It's applied to what is beneficial according to the higher authority, a higher knowledge. So one has to know how to be compassionate.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Clear?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Shilpesh Prabhu. Yes, Shrimati Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Prabhupada. Actually, this is not my question. Namrata is watching on YouTube the class, and she couldn't join because of a net. So she is asking, sometimes sense objects are so subtle, we don't recognize that they are affecting us. How to overcome or recognize them?
Well, if you stay fixed in devotional service, then you won't be affected by them. It's just like if you bring in the light, the darkness goes. Even if there's a little bit of darkness, if you stay focused on the light, the darkness will not affect you. So the answer is to stay fixed in consciousness of Krishna or devotion to Krishna. Yeah, Visayam Vinivartante Niharasya Dehinam Vasovar Jam Vasopyasya Param Drisman Nivartante. This is also from this chapter, it's verse number 59. By experience a higher taste, one can give up the lower taste. The Krishna consciousness is the higher taste.
Thanks, Maharaj.
Thank you, ma'am. Mataji, there is a question on chat.
Sure. Okay, let me read this, Maharaj. This is from Elena. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances, O Glory Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Referring to the characteristics of the soul, I have a question. Radhanath Swami Maharaj's book describes an episode in which a man is prosecuted as a false guru, a yogi with mystic power capable of having mental control over his disciples and somehow trapping their souls. How is this possible? How does karma work in these cases?
Well, that doesn't apply across the board. It can happen to persons who are vulnerable or to persons who are not in knowledge, who are weak or susceptible or attracted to what that mystic person has. But if you're not in any of these categories, then you're not going to be attracted or attached or what we say, mesmerized by such things. Give you an example. This is an extreme example, but it's an example. There was one very great, powerful yogi, and he was also a devotee, so he was a devotee, Neem Karoli Baba. You know, he's passed away now, but he was a powerful Vaishnava, but also performed yoga also. So he had a disciple called Ramdas, and Ramdas was the person who started to propagate that LSD is actually, you know, a way to experience higher consciousness. So he was with his guru. His guru heard about what he was preaching. He was preaching in the West. Neem Karoli Baba was in India. So he came to see his guru. And he said, well, let me see what that LSD, whatever you got. So he gave him 10 hits of LSD. Neem Karoli Baba took it. And after he took it, he said, am I supposed to feel something or what? He was on, his consciousness was higher. He wasn't experiencing anything like that. That's an extreme example. How consciousness can be so developed that one is not affected by anything less. So raise your consciousness to complete Krishna consciousness. Stita D. Muni, one who is fixed in devotional service. Then one is not bothered by or affected by or deterred by such things that may appear.
Thanks, Maharaj.
So
I hope
much.
that answers. Yeah.
But one of the ways to overcome that, even if you are not on a higher level, is stay in the association of devotees. Because when you're in association of devotees, you have more protection from such things. Bharat Maharaj, he was in the forest, and he became attracted by a little baby deer. And his attraction developed into affection and finally into very deep love for the deer, where he actually started to see the deer as his only object of activity, taking care of the deer. And he gave up his spiritual practices. Now, one of the reasons why you might say that Bart fell into that, and ultimately he died in that consciousness and was forced to take another birth, is because he wasn't around any Vaishnavas. He had no association. You might say if he was with other devotees, the devotees would say, hey, Bart, you're in Maya, you're becoming, unnaturally affected towards this deer. And you give up your spiritual practice. So when we're in association with devotees, we have strength. We get more strength by that association. Spiritual strength.
And but in this episode, I mentioned it in a book. This devotee ran away to this guru and have an association with Radhana Swami Maharaj, but Radhana Swami Maharaj don't want to have too much association with this devotee.
So what are you saying?
This devotee have a possibility to have association, but in that moment, Radhana Swami Maharaj don't give the association, give the association, but not too much,
So
and go away.
But Radhanath Swami wasn't Radhanath Swami at the time.
Yeah.
He was also practicing. He didn't want that type of association, and it mentions why, because the man was always disturbed constantly. Constantly disturbed. Although he ran away from his guru, he was disturbed. His mind was always disturbed. And that kind of association is not good.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thanks, Elena. Any other questions, devotees? Yes, Dipti Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranamams, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaji, I have one question regarding the attachments you mentioned about, right? So what I'm feeling is that, okay, by practicing Krishna conscious, at least we can try to reduce, I mean, I'm just talking at my level, and like, on our day to day, we can reduce our attachments towards the sense objects. But how can we reduce the attachments to the people, like especially in the family? We are so attached to our family, kids. So if anything happens, then we get so much worry, right? So how can we, I mean, should we actually reduce our attachments towards the family? That is one question. And if so, how can we reduce that attachment? Thank you, Prabhuji.
You have to see your family members as being gifts coming from Krishna for you to serve them. That's all. So if you're serving them, then the attachment is based on devotion to them. So you serve them by giving them Krishna consciousness. If you have children, obviously you take care of them. The children have come to you by way of Krishna's arrangement. You might call them your children, but they're actually part and parcel of Krishna. They're spirit souls. They have their own individual identity separate from the fact that they are your children. So you play the role as a mother. You play the role as a well-wishing guide, friend, like that. But you do it in a devotional mood, not simply in the material world. Just like, there was one situation where my god sister wrote to Srila Prabhupada. She said, I have this 2-year-old child, and I also have so much service at the temple, and I don't have enough time to take care of the child because I'm always engaged in doing service to the deities. Prabhupada wrote back that child worship is more important than deity worship. Take care of your child, that's your first business. He said these children come by way of Krishna's arrangement, and they're meant to be given what they need to grow both materially and spiritually. When it comes to family members and friends, you play the role that you're in, but you keep it connected somehow to devotional activity. So do whatever you can to bring your family members and friends to the spiritual platform. Encourage them. Show that spiritual life is complete. There's nothing lacking in it. You can still have a family and you can still carry on the affairs of the family, but keeping Krishna in the center. That's all. Learn how to keep Krishna in the center. Keeping Krishna in the center means we follow religious principles, not material principles in governing the family. Religious principles can be applied in all situations. So the religious principles apply to the circumstance. So there's religious principles for family life, there's religious principles for brahmachari life, there's religious principles for sannyas life. They may be slightly different, but they govern that ashram so people can fulfill their needs on a human level and at the same time make progress in spiritual life. We don't neglect our material responsibilities, but we don't simply keep them focused on the body concept of life. We bring them to the spiritual part.
Thank you, Maharaji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
So yeah, I mean, we practically speaking, just like we say when a mother gets pregnant, then she should be, hearing the kirtan, reading the books, and the way that child in the womb is getting transcendental sound. And it's growing in that sound vibration because it's so much connected to the mother. So that's one way of serving your child even before it's born. They have games, they have different books, they have different little deities for children. Children can learn Krishna consciousness from a very young age. It's all there. With family members and friends, try to teach them basically, or be an example for how a devotee acts. The devotee is kind, the devotee is concerned about the welfare of others. These are all principles that we use and which are foundational in relationships. Materialist people use these also, but their desire is different. The desire is to foster their material success. Ours is to bring people closer to Krishna.
Thanks, Maharaj. I think Dipti Mataji, that answers your question. There is a comment from Elena Mataji. I'll just read that, Maharaj. This existence is comparable in a battle in some ways. A senior devotee once said that compassion does not mean hypocrisy. Death for some very suffering souls is a form of liberating. And this comment also highlights the capacity for discriminate that develops on the spiritual path to have a clear vision. Wasn't much.
Can you re-explain that in your own words?
Yes, Elena Mataji, do you want to explain this in your own words? Thank you.
I don't know. Is a sharing? Is just a sharing because
It's fine. You've copy pasted. You have taken
it's
it from
difficult
somewhere.
for me formulation in. Excuse me. Is a point. The truth is very important, no? And when I hearing this comment to senior devotee, I appreciate so much because this senior devotee is not have a clear vision, and I think reflection is not what is the truth in compassion, no?
Yeah,
because
then we get knowledge from authority, and then we learn that knowledge, and then we learn how that knowledge is applied in our day-to-day life. How to apply compassion, how to apply practical understandings and execution of our devotions. So first thing is to hear and understand. The second thing is to apply. And application might require someone who can teach you how to apply it in your situation. That's where you ask questions.
Thanks. Any other questions, devotees? Last minute, okay. There is no other questions, Guru Maharaj. We have 20 past. Okay, there's a comment from Ripti Mataji, if I can just quickly say that. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you for very nice class. Yes, we are constantly surrounded by sense objects, but if we are focused on divine activities as given by the spiritual master, one can remain resolute. Thank you for your association. Thanks, Mataji. Thanks for the sweet comment.
You have a choice how to use your mind.
Brilliant. Okay.
So Srimati, describe the upcoming program.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Tomorrow's class will be the chapter 3 summary, and it is given by His Grace Bhuta Bhavana Prabhuji. I request devotees to join, and please take advantage of Prabhuji's association. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Bhuta Bhavana is actually brilliant in presenting knowledge, so you'll definitely have a amazing experience listening to him. Don't miss it. And we can stay with this whole series, 18 verses. Then you'll have a working knowledge of this philosophy, which you can apply to any and every situation in your Krishna consciousness.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, devotees. So please join us for next 16 days for the Bhagavad Gita revision, which is going through overview of Bhagavad Gita with different devotees giving classes. And after that, we will continue with the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we are on first canto, 16th chapter. So the daily classes is always on UK time, 12 to 1 p.m. So please continue to join us after Bhagavad Gita overview. Thank you. And that is also given by quite a few senior disciples of Guru Maharaj. Thank you. We continue to hope to see you again. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for your time and association. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Very well,
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Hare Krishna.